Right, before we get into this episode of Fourth Tier Fever, you know what I'm about to say. We're currently pushing towards 800 subscribers on our YouTube channel, and currently only 32.4% of you are actually subscribed. So, if you want to be the first to hear about everything we're doing and you want to see us push out more content, please do press that big red button and we can continue to do exactly that. It costs you nothing and you can always change your mind. Right, onto the episode. Right, hello and welcome to another episode of Fourth Tier Fever. And as well, you may have noticed, Jordan's not here, which means someone's let me be in charge again. I don't know how that's happened, but that's just where we're at. But thankfully, I am not alone. I am joined by, well, two of my lovely co-hosts here. I am joined by our League Two survival expert. It is, of course, Bear Grylls. Oh, sorry, Jack. How are we doing, mate?
Do you know what? Not too bad. I'm pleasantly surprised by this week. I'm enjoying it.
Oh, I'm not surprised after your result, which I'm sure we'll go into very, very soon. And then we're of course joined by Jake as well, who I mean you're probably a little bit gutted that Jordan's not on. I mean, you just have to gloat to the rest of us instead.
Yeah, it was a surprising victory and a good one, and puts me should be top of the FDF table, which will be a nice little bonus.
I mean, imagine being top of the FTF table. I'm just totally pretending that doesn't exist anymore. Might be something to do with our position in that table, but anyway, let's get straight into the games because we've got a lot to cover this week. And there was a Thursday game. For some reason, whenever I'm in charge, there's a Thursday game. And this time it was Bromley Walsall. Okay, so this was an interesting one. I saw bits of this game. I mean, it finished 2-2, but I mean, the only way I feel like I can look at it is just yet another wasted chance for Walsall. How do we think that one panned out, guys?
Yeah, I mean it's a disappointing result. Having looking at it, having picked up a good result against Bromley, in my mind, if we can do it, anyone can. And it's just it's disappointing again. Walsall performed better in the second half. Picked up a point, rescued it. But yeah, it's just disappointing, isn't it? I think they're very lucky that no one's capitalised on it. I'm surprised by Walsall. I thought they'd get better. I thought they'd regain that form. I don't think anything's terribly changed or gone wrong. They've still got fairly the same squad that they had, and I think the players they brought in can, sort of fill Nathan Lowe's boots to a degree. I think they're good enough to win games at very least. But it's just not clicking for them. I think that they'll survive the season. They'll go up. I'm no doubt about that. They'll be fine. They're pretty much already promoted in my eyes. But I don't know how well they're going to face in League One, I'm afraid.
Yeah, Jake, hit us with your thoughts. Would you agree with Jack's statement there?
Yeah, I do agree. They are only 6 points above, which is slightly concerning because of how far away at the top they were. So as much as they'll be disappointed, but they did come from behind twice to get a point, so it's not the end of the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one with them. I think, yeah, well, if you think all the way back to the beginning of the season, we were sort of saying about Walsall, maybe a mid-table finish. We're not sure they've got the strikers to compete. Obviously, Nathan Lowe existed and was a total superstar, but since he's been gone, I mean, they've got players there that can do a reasonable job, but it's not quite the same. And then they went and lost Ellis Harrison early in that game as well through injury. So it's just further problems. I feel like they're going to be a little bit restricted in forward areas. I mean, the rest of the squad is still decent. It's just it's just missing that little something, isn't it? I think. But well, we should probably give some mention to Bromley as well. I think we've got to give them some credit. It's another positive performance from them. Do we think it's too late for them to make the playoffs? Are they still in the race?
In my mind, I've always been sort of fairly clear that I was surprised at how well Bromley's done. I think they're a good side, don't get me wrong, but I think I don't know. I've always been slightly pessimistic with Bromley. So for me, probably not although I'm well aware they can do it, they just need to go on a bit of a run, and I'm sure they'll get there.
Yeah, they have a favourable running, but it's just like dropping points to Tranmere. It's just disappointing for them. So they need, if they can do it, they just need to be a bit more consistent.
Well, yeah, I mean they're what 6 points off at the minute, but I mean the side in seventh is Colchester, and we know how they've been performing because we haven't shut up about it in in recent weeks. But yeah, I mean for Walsall, it's not an awful point, I suppose, away from home, but I suppose in the grand scheme of things, it's probably a little bit disappointing to drop two. But of course, they kind of got away with it in a sense because a certain team then went and beat Bradford on the Saturday. I wonder who that could possibly be. Jack,
Yeah,
talk to me.
not too bad, is it? I mean, it's another brilliant result for Andy Crosby and Tranmere. I think I've said numerous times on this podcast and another one that the squad is nowhere near the standard that it should be to get relegated. I think we would well clear of it. I think we've got players with wealth of EFL experience, and they are good enough to survive. I think in this division, everyone has their strengths, everyone has their weaknesses, and I think Adkins sort of played to those weaknesses. They never really got to the strengths, and I think now we're finally seeing what those players truly can do. And I think it's lovely to see them playing with that sort of freedom. I think I started to worry that maybe they'd not get to show their strengths around about February time, but obviously Crosby came in, and it's just been like a breath of fresh air. Again, another good result. We probably held on. That's probably the best way to describe it. But again, you do what you got to do to get results. I think, in my mind, a few months back, we'd probably lose that 4 or 5-0. And look, we've come out of there with all 3 points. There can't be any complaints. But we've got to keep it up now. I think we're oh so close to survival now. I think looking at it, like I say, it's just playing to those players' strengths, and I think you can see it. Especially a big shout out to Josh Hawkes, obviously, who's again scored. I'm just glad to see him on a football pitch. The players are smiling, and that's what I want to see.
Do you think there's a change in resilience as well? Because I mean, Bradford are a good side. I know they had a number of their key attacking players missing, not just Cook now, of course. Patterson, Sarcevic. They've got a number of players out, and I mean they still did create a little bit, but it felt like Tranmere were holding firm.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to look at games that we've played. I mean, it looks at our game against Swindon. I think it was we just collapsed under Nigel Adkins, and it's bizarre to see. Adkins was the motivation man. As I sort of pinned him at the start of the season, his key statement was "Together, everyone achieves more." A team. But there was times that we never seemed to it looked like strangers playing with each other. And we're so more formed as a team now. It's such a strong bond that the players seem to have with one another. And yeah, it's good to see. It's what Tranmere is. It's what we, as fans, see the club as. It's players loving each other and running through a brick wall for each other. It did feel like we lost that this season, but obviously we've got it back now, and the celebrations at the end show that every single player is buzzing, and I think they've all had their hardships and the struggles this season, both on the pitch and off it for some of them. And I think it's so nice to see it all working out. I think we've rode our fair share of bad luck, so it's good to see it. So finally, some good luck.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think just to get that that sense of camaraderie going within the squad, it's such an underrated thing. I think as fans, we don't necessarily always see it because a lot of this stuff happens behind the scenes. But when that passion does sort of come through and you see it on the pitch, yeah, it's something special. But Jake, from a Bradford perspective, what did you make of this one?
Yeah, another disappointing defeat. 2 defeats in a row against sides which you wouldn't expect them to beat, especially if they have such good home form. I think it was 10 straight wins at home, which was like the first time they'd done that. So it feels very League Two, their past 2 results. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much, but they do have Colchester next, which could be 3 defeats in a row. And then you're suddenly asking a little bit more questions. So they are obviously missing key players once they're back. Don't worry too much about them.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, while other teams are, dropping points, it's a case of it's still anyone's game. You just need that one sort of moment to just take that opportunity and really push the way that Colchester have been doing, actually, just from these teams that are slightly higher up. And I'm sure someone will do it. There'll be another twist in the tail yet, but yeah, I think let's continue to have a little look at the relegation battle, actually. So the next game I'd like us to cover would be Morecambe Barrow, which to me just looked like a very strange game through and through, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there was the red card, but then Morecambe managed to score anyway after getting the red card. It just felt very, very flat from a Barrow perspective. I know in terms of the stats, it looked really good aside from the scoreline, but to me, like, just the way they looked on the pitch, and it just didn't look quite right to me. Jack, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got to take into consideration. Obviously, Barrow have sort of fallen off a cliff since earlier on in the season, and obviously the new manager coming in and they're starting to regain that form. But it's all, in my mind, it's always going to be a struggle. I think their season was done, and the new manager's just got to hold it firm now. And a draw does that in my mind. I think that they're comfortable with the position. There's no real success. You don't get anything more for climbing the table. I think you've got to look to next season, and any points are a bonus. But in my mind, you're not dropping a division. I don't think there's a chance of them getting into the playoffs. So I would be very surprised if they did. So you take it where you can. But yeah, I think defensively would be my worry. I mean, you look at the stats. Yeah, 26 shots, 72% possession for Barrow. It was domination from that standpoint. But then you look at Morecambe have had 4 shots and scored twice. It's slight concern for me. But Barrow have done well to rescue a draw, obviously, against a 10-man side.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's just the fact that Morecambe scored a second time after getting a red card, and I mean when you've still got 11 men on the pitch, that is, I'm sorry, but that's unforgivable. And they've given themselves way too much of a mountain to climb. And I mean, yes, they've had all these shots, but they haven't had the quality to break down the Morecambe side they're going to be sitting back, especially once you've given them a second goal. And of course, Morecambe need points a whole lot more. Given the way the game panned out, it was probably a good point. But coming into this game, Jake, do you think Morecambe would have taken a point?
Yeah, because they wouldn't have knew that Tranmere would have picked up a huge 3 points. So a point against Barrow wouldn't have seemed the end of the world. But with the results elsewhere not going their way, it does feel a little bit of a kick in the teeth and being 2-0 up.
I have to second that as well. I think you would never, ever in a million years see Tranmere beating Bradford. So I mean, that would have left them 3 points off us. So it would have been huge in reality. But obviously, I mean, we've somehow picked up a win.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is a little more to it though, because when you're one of the bottom sides in the division, there's only a handful of games left against other sides that are towards the bottom end that are struggling. This to me was a wasted opportunity. If from like coming into the game, I would have said, right, Morecambe win. This has to be. They absolutely need to win this game. I think in the grand scheme of things, they've managed the game well, and they've showed a reasonable amount of fight, certainly to still come away with something. It's just that one silly moment that sort of cost them. It's an individual mistake, which is a shame, but I don't know. I think it gives me some kind of hope that they can still bounce back with some kind of result. It just sort of depends who they've got left to play, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Of course, there was one other side right near the bottom, and that is Carlisle, and they lost to my friends from South London, AFC Wimbledon. So fair play to Matt Dennis though for at least scoring one. I don't know if they realised that he was playing for us, earlier this season, but well in Matt. Uh, But no, I mean, this looked like a game where AFC were always on top. If we're being honest, I mean, the defence for the both AFC goals, Carlisle were static all over the place. I'm not too sure what their plan was as such, but whatever it was, it didn't work. Thoughts on that, Jack?
Yeah, I've got it down as a routine win for Wimbledon. It's probably harsh on Carlisle, really. But I mean, yeah, it's nice to see Alistair Smith scoring again. I think he's shown his quality once more. You look at it in the second half, Carlisle dominated possession, but they just couldn't create enough. I've been really impressed by Wimbledon's defence this season. I think it was slightly too early to call it, but I was really impressed with Wimbledon's keeper. I thought he's probably one of the best in the division, especially what I saw from him against ourselves. But yeah, I think their defence holds up really well, and I think that's just what Carlisle struggled with. And it's been the case all season. I just feel sorry for Carlisle. I really do. They're staring down the barrel at 2 relegations now. And dare I say, I think the relegation race is all but over. And it's a shame because, yeah, as a club, they probably don't deserve to go down, but I don't think anyone really does. 2 teams have to. And I think it probably will be them this season.
Oh, that's a big statement. I like it. We'll come back to that in a little bit, but I do want to cover the game just a little bit more first. Well, just more on Carlisle, really. I think Jordan posted a stat or something in our chat. What was it? Only one of the January signings actually started in that game against AFC. It just, you can just see much bigger problems going beyond the team. I almost wonder if it's a case of the squad is just way, way, way too big. I mean, they already had a big squad coming into January. They bring in all these other players for Williamson, and then he's gone, and we're back to using the old ones again now. I mean, how do they even operate at the minute? I mean, you've got a bunch of players there that you've got to try and keep match fit in case they are needed. You've got tons of players there you're going to have disappointed, and how do you keep the first team, fully motivated, knowing that they're not going to lose a place? I mean, there's all sorts of like complications with that side. I just don't really understand it. I don't know. I mean, I still think there's a bit of fight in them, but too little, too late, Jake.
Yeah, it felt like a big defeat, especially with results going as well, like we said. There's just too many players, like you said. It can't be easy when you've got no confidence. The team's changing quite often, and you're trying to keep probably another 10, 11 players happy. And then the players that are playing are losing more and more confidence because they're losing games. It's just such a big problem. And I think if they do go down, which looks very likely, there does need to be a big clear out, probably top to bottom.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm almost surprised that in January they didn't just terminate some contracts, because we know they've got at least some money behind them. Because I mean, they clearly had enough money because they're bringing in all these players in the first place. I don't know. I feel like they've just lost their balance in that regard. But I'm going to come to a bit of a big question now in the relegation battle. I think both of you kind of answered your thoughts on Carlisle a little bit. But do we now think that the current bottom 2 will be the same bottom 2 at the end of the season? I'd like an answer from both of you, please.
Yes. I think with the form that we're going, I think we're clear. I've been sort of pointing at it all season. I'm still worried for Harrogate, but I think they'll escape it. I think they've picked up some good wins against Carlisle and Accrington, against those sides that are there or thereabouts when needed. So yeah, that win against Carlisle has probably saved them from a relegation battle. I don't see a way out for the bottom 2, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. They're just gaps too big now, and the teams at the bottom are going to places and picking up results that you don't expect them to. And Morecambe and Carlisle haven't done that throughout the whole season.
I think you both make perfectly valid points there. And I mean, if we're looking at Morecambe on the edge there, they're currently on 30, Tranmere 6 ahead, and then Harrogate are 10 clear of Morecambe. I mean, that's a lot of games to make up. That's 3 wins and a draw's worth of difference with 9 games left to play. That's a huge turnaround in form. It's still possible because I think both sides are showing some kind of fight, but I'm not sure it's enough at this point. So I suppose basically we're just saying, well, there you go, folks. Relegation battle is done. There you go. But yes, I'm sure we may eat our words knowing our luck with predictions. But
I have to say, yeah, like you say, anything can happen. I thought a couple of weeks ago that we might be done. So, as much as we say it, things can change. We picked up 2 valuable wins and 2 draws when probably against 4 of the most informed sides in the division. Like, anything can happen at any time. I trust Derek Adams at Morecambe. I really would. But yeah, it's not just over, but certainly it's not looking promising for the bottom 2.
well,
But it's
yeah,
League
for
2.
sure.
Anything can happen.
Well, yeah, exactly. That League Two is mental, so literally anything could happen. I mean, to be fair, I think even a couple of weeks ago, I was kind of saying on one of these pods, just like, oh yeah, maybe Carlisle could actually be quite good, and they're gonna make it out of it. They look like they're building momentum, and immediately, nope, straight back down. So probably been proven wrong on that one, but we'll see how it goes. Right, I think that's enough of all the sort of misery. Let's get back to the promotion sides, and well, actually, no, there is a bit more misery. I'm coming to our game next. It's Port Vale, who obviously beat us 3-0. And I mean, this was just awful, and awful. It's the only way I can put it. We were very, very flat. You can tell we're a side that's very short on confidence. I think we just flat all around, and I think our game plan of the whole sort of our possession play sort of leans into Port Vale style. I think it benefited Port Vale a lot more than it did us. And I think they could have scored more. To be fair, they easily could have scored more. We did have one decent chance, which was very similar to the goal we scored the other week, actually, with Crowley crossing the ball in for Offord, but he hit the bar this time, so nearly, but not close enough. Yeah, I mean, for Port Vale, it's a statement of intent. I don't think we've made much of a game of it, which is a shame on our end because, like I said, I mean, our season, as far as I'm concerned, is over. It just would have been nice to see us, put up a bit of a fight at some point. That would have been quite nice to see. But it does show that we've still got a long way to go, and whoever does come in for us, it's a case of they've got to really turn the confidence around. I don't want to see this team sort of like separate as such. I don't want to see a huge rebuild next season. I think we've got a decent core there. I can see these are decent players. It's just there are some players in this squad now that I think, okay, you're probably not going to get success here. You might just need a fresh start somewhere else, even though I can see you're a decent player. I think Nico Lawrence is probably the perfect example, made a terrible mistake for the first goal. But I know from his performances earlier in the season, he's a very good player. And I'm sure he'll go somewhere else next season and probably do very well. It's just one of those things, the mental game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think from a Port Vale perspective, it's just as routine as it gets, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the way that you've described MK at the moment is exactly the way that we've been the past few seasons. I think, and we've been there and seen it. Our players that were okay here, were sort of underperformed, have gone and done a million miles better elsewhere. And it's the sad nature of football, really. I think again you're missing the sort of spark that we've got. We've pinned it on the manager and we've got it right by the look of it. Who knew a manager change could have a positive effect. But yeah, I mean it's one of them for MK. You're sort of trying to find. And I think I said it a couple of weeks ago. You're trying to find the solution, really, find the problem to then solve it. Changing the manager, probably too late to bring anyone else in, or it is in your case. So then you've got to hope that whoever's brought in changes things. But again, there's no guarantee. And I know in that sort of state, you're looking at, well, should we just start again and get 11 new players and just build from the start? Like I say, that the players are good players. We talked about them in a half a season podcast. Like, they're good players. They're some of the best in the league. I've been very positive about MK's players, probably more than yourself, Luke. I think I've given them a lot of credit, and it's just, for some reason, it's a shame that they're not performing together. Maybe it's confidence. I don't know, but yeah, something's got to change. Who would you want? I'm not sure whether we've discussed this on another pod, but who would you want as manager next season? Have you thought about that yet, or?
I mean, when we spoke about this previously, I think straight away I said, right, Luke Williams has to be. But I think if that was the case, I almost wonder, why hasn't it happened already? Because that would have been an easy thing to go and do and get done very, very quickly. Whereas I think we're taking our time with it. We're being very precise about getting this appointment right. I think all I really want to see is a project manager with ambition. So, we've got the money to bring someone in, a big name. I don't know, say for example, Michael Duff, just for example's sake. We can bring in someone of that caliber. We're in a position to be able to do that. But if we do that, we've got to give them the time to and let them build their project, because we can't just be like, oh yeah, here you go, have a window, spend what you like, we'll have a bad run of form and off you go, see you later. Because that's pretty much been how it's gone, at least with Lindsay. Although I do get a sense that there was more going on behind the scenes, but I can't say all that much on that one, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a tricky one. I'm not sure whether we'll make the appointment before the end of the season. It's really hard to tell at this stage. All we really know is that we're left with the coaches that the players like. We've brought in Ian Watson, who was Mike Williamson's assistant, who the players also all really like. So we've basically just given them all the coaching staff that they like, and then said, right, try and get your confidence back, and we'll give you a manager at some point, and we'll go again next season. But yeah, I don't know. I could talk about us for a long time with everything going on at the club at the minute. But I think let's have a little bit of a mention of Port Vale as well. I mean, they're still in the autos race, and they've got a game in hand. If they won that, they'd be third. What do you make of Port Vale at the minute, Jake?
Yeah, they're a side that is very up and down, which is very typical of Darren Moore sides. They obviously went on such a good run at the start of the season, and it's not really stayed the same, but obviously now's the time to get momentum. There's a big impressive victory yesterday. They've got the next two games very favourable, and they have a bit of a trickier run, but if they can get that momentum back, it's the perfect time for that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think if you're asked to ask me at the minute, I reckon Port Vale would creep into that auto spot, just because they're that difficult to beat. It's the same reason I've been backing Colchester this whole time. They're just so difficult to actually win against. I mean, yes, they don't win enough, and they've had a lot of draws, but they're making sure that they're never stopped. They're always getting at least something, at least that 1 point or a 3 point or anything, just to keep them on the rise. But anyway, let's get on to some of the other promotion games. And there was a very, very big game this weekend, and that was Crewe Doncaster, which was a draw. which well, I don't know. I think coming into this, I was kind of expecting Doncaster to run away with it. I felt like they've been decent away. Crewe have had all their problems with injuries recently as well. But actually, I thought Crewe put up a very good fight. If anything, I think they generated the better quality chances in that game, and perhaps a little bit unlucky not to come away with all three. What would you say to that, Jack?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you. I think it was a fair result. I think it was an even contest. Like you say, Crewe probably created the better chances, but Doncaster created more of them. But just neither side could find the back of the net more than once. Good comeback from Doncaster to get a point. Don't get me wrong. Obviously scored in the 75th minute. But they just couldn't find the back of the net. And I think that's essentially been the issue for both sides in that game, as bluntly as I can put it. Doncaster have scored well this season. Crewe not so much, but have conceded, kept clean sheets well. Put it that way. So it's always going to be an even contest. Obviously, yeah, Crewe's out of form a little bit, but yeah, it was an even game. There's not much else I can say. An even contest, and I think it's a fair result.
Yeah, it's one of those. It keeps both teams, there or thereabouts. Jake, do you think there's one team that might be, I don't know, maybe a bit happier or a bit more disappointed with a draw, or do you think it's a case of both sides will take it on to the next one, sort of thing?
It's a good point for both sides, but I think Crewe will be the happier because they have started to fall away a little bit in recent weeks. They've been a bit inconsistent, and now they're just trying to scrape that playoff spot. And Doncaster are obviously aiming high for the auto, so I think they'll be happier with the point. It's not a bad point, so.
Yeah, not too bad. I'll tell you who won't be happy with their result. Notts County. They've wasted yet another opportunity. we keep saying this about the top sides at the minute, but a 2-1 loss at home to Chesterfield. Now, again, this is another interesting game to me. I don't know. You can always tell with Notts that they have the quality. There's always just something there that holds them back a little bit at times. There are weeks where you think, oh, wow, this team is something else, and then there's games like this where it's like, oh, it's just a little bit flat, not quite enough. And they've lost out to a side. Chesterfield are probably in form at the minute. I think they've had a couple of decent results, but aside of not as quality, I'd expect a little bit more. I don't know. What do you make of it, Jack?
Yeah, I think we're always sort of in that position of expecting more from Notts County. And I can't really put my finger on where. I think people have blamed the missed chances from Alessandro Jatta this season. He's top goal scorer in the league at the moment, or joint. So, it's hard to really say that. Again, I look back, although he does have the most missed chances in the league, I look back at last season and it's the same story for Macaulay Langstaff. He had the most goals, but also one of the most goals. I can't quite remember if he was top, but also the most missed chances. I don't think it's goal scoring. I think that the goal scorers are good enough, but maybe they've got too much pressure on it. I'm not too sure because again, the midfield's good. And I think it's one of them situations again. I just can't put a finger on it. But they're just not hitting form, and I don't think they did. Obviously, back end of last season, they started to struggle. And yeah, it is gutting for them because I think they're a good side. I like the strikers, especially both this season and last season. I think they're both very clearly good strikers, but something's just not clicking for them.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I feel like at times this season I've probably not given Chesterfield enough credit, but I'm going to give them a bit of credit here. They are starting to hit form, and I think part of that is also just down to Pebble. He has 3 goals, and he scored in each of his last 3 games. And if there's ever a time to put a run together when you're one of those sides in mid-table, is it too late? Do you reckon, Jake? I don't know. It might be possible still.
Yeah, I think it is still possible because they've got one of the best run-ins towards the end of the season, and they look really, really good going forward. So Pebbles hit form at the right time. They're not conceding many, so I do think that they could still do it, but I'm not too sure that they will.
I also just want to put a shout out there to Amanda Dover whilst we're on them. I think you look at Markinde and James Berry leaving in January. He had huge pressure to find form. Hadn't quite managed it, but in the past 3 games, he's been probably one of their standout players. Man of the match on Saturday, even though he didn't score an assist. I think his influence as well.
Well, yeah, we've gone on about various teams being the Doncaster of this season. That ridiculous run they went on. We've gone on about Colchester doing it. It's not too late for another team to go and do it yet. And I mean, I do think Chesterfield have a lot of quality in their side. It's never quite clicked. They've had all these injury problems. As you mentioned, they've lost players in January as well. But I don't know, maybe things are just finally clicking at just about the right moment. But I don't know. We'll see going into the next couple of games. I'm sure we'll preview the next one. All intrigued on who they're up against next. But well, where are we at? We are at. Oh yes, Colchester, of course. Convenient timing. They won again, 3-0 this time against Fleetwood. I mean, we've been saying all this time, like, well, I've certainly been saying all this time, playoff team. Is it? They're still with a chance of autos. Low key, they're still in that battle. I think what 6 points off or something at the minute. Could they keep going? Do you think they can go that one step further?
Absolutely. Obviously, I wasn't a part of the pod back before the season started, but on my pre-season table, I put Colchester third, which is a huge shout. But I still think they're in with a shout of it now. There's a good squad. You've got to believe in the Cowleys. I think they've fully believed in the managers, and they're proving their worth. Yeah, it's a huge win, isn't it? I think you look at certain players, Lyle Taylor, if he gets on form, if he gets with the right manager, I think was key, then he's going to score goals. I think I remember hearing he'd played under Danny Cowley before, so obviously there was that partnership, and it's worked for them. He's been good, he's been solid. Again, he scored at the weekend, and he helped them to a lovely, comfortable 3-0 win. Obviously, Fleetwood fans didn't seem too happy about it. I think their performance wasn't great, but also obviously Colchester, a good performance on their behalf. And then you were talking before about how Colchester had picked up too many draws, and they've turned that form around. 5 wins out of 5 now. I mean that's comfortable, isn't it? If you're going to put a string of results together, that would be it.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's simply outstanding form, and the fact that no team has been able to be that consistent, it opens that door just a little bit. So when all these teams are drawing and losing to these teams that we keep saying they should probably beat, if you're winning your games, you're going to catch him real quick, and that's exactly what Colchester have done. Also, want to shout out what our former player Jack Payne has been a catalyst for their creative play all season. He is truly the one that got away for us. He's so good, just a brilliant creator. Well, from a Fleetwood perspective, it's just typical Fleetwood, isn't it? It's a case of they've had a couple of really good results. They got a decent point against Port Vale, brilliant win over Crewe, and then they've gone and fallen flat against Colchester. What do you make of Fleetwood, Jake?
Yeah, they just a side that have been really mixed all season. We expected them to be a little bit average in a way this season. They've won 12, drew 13 and lost 12, which is pretty much what we expected. So, although that is a disappointing result, they have got plenty of positives to build on in their recent games. So, and sometimes you need a result like that to really see how far off the playoffs you are and see who's good enough and who's not if they do want to push next season. So, it's not the end of the world for them.
Well, yeah, like I say, it's just one of them, isn't it? I think if they can I don't know. They've got the core of a good side there. It just needs those extra couple of building blocks just to set them in motion on an upward trend. There we go. Speak English. Right, I'm going to come straight back to you, Jake, because the next game we've got to cover is the Grimsby Salford one. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think Jordan mentioned it on what Jack will read out in a minute. A game which wasn't great to watch, but ultimately we got across the line. It was just a game of a lot of half chances. Grimsby didn't really have a shot on target, but still looked good going forward. And then we just pop up with that little bit of quality and a disappointing goal to concede from a Grimsby point of view, and we just get the win and leave Grimsby with 3 points, which is always a good result. Just need to keep that going because in recent times it's been a little bit of a poor run of form, which is just costing us. But that win puts us a little bit closer to the playoffs, which I don't think we'll make, but not the end of the world if we don't.
Well, yeah, I mean, before that game, you were what, 6 without a win? So, I mean, it's just a good result to stop the rot, I suppose. Although building on that may be a little bit tricky because you've got Doncaster next, but we'll cover that in greater depth on the midweek pod. But well, obviously no Jordan, so Jack he has left us some comments in the chat. Can you talk us through 'em?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much as you said, Jake. He said, if you watched it as a neutral, I feel sorry for you. He said it was a terrible game. Salford deserved 3 points. There's only one team in it. Grimsby didn't really test the keeper enough. Or maybe that was Salford. Yeah, no, that was Salford. Didn't really test the keeper enough. But they scored from a corner and they got the win, and so fair play to them. Grimsby nowhere near good enough, but they got exactly what they deserved. 0 shots on target says it all. Players were tired, he said. And it looks like they probably need to make some changes. Star player for them seems to be Tyrell Warren, had a good game. And David Turey, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, did well in his 20-minute cameo that he got. Obviously, I think he's been called up for international duty as well, so well done to him. We should have defended better for the corner, but yeah, I mean the pitch. He says something he's complaining about a bit now. I think he wants to be a side that plays proper football, and they just can't do that on that pitch. So you've got to change it around a bit. But they've got some huge games coming up. They need to beat Newport next week, especially helping our own Faultier Fever table. And they play Colchester and Crewe back to back. So arguably season-defining games for Grimsby as they push for those playoff places.
Yeah, I mean that all sounds pretty reasonable. To be fair, I mean that's a couple of home losses on the spin. So Newport are a weaker opponent, I think, if we're being fair, than Salford and Notts County. So this is an opportunity. But I mean, make no mistake, Newport will still punish you if you play as badly as Grimsby did there, by the sounds of things. So they'll definitely need to turn it around. Any thoughts of your own, Jack, before we move on to the next one?
No. Yeah, I mean it's a good one for Salford, isn't it? I think. Yeah, I mean when we played Grimsby, they just looked like they ran out of steam. You could say it wasn't a bad squad, but they just weren't at it. They weren't in the game, and that cost them. And obviously they'll be hoping that they can regain it. I think it is just about regaining that energy more than anything. Obviously Jordan W, fingers crossed that they do. What you said about Newport as well, in my mind, they've just won a game, so I think they might lose the next one because that seems to be their trend this season. So fingers crossed.
Certainly got a few of those sorts of teams this season. Win a game, lose a game, week on week, pretty much the whole season.
Absolutely.
But I don't know. I feel like Grimsby are under that little bit more pressure now. Now that they've lost that playoff spot, they've got Colchester has just gone zooming past them. You've got a couple of teams below them that could still threaten the playoffs as well. Crewe are potentially looking better. It's a case of they need those results and now. And I think, as Jordan said in his comments there, those two games. Who was it? Colchester and Crewe. I think he said those are proper game season definers. Those ones. But anyway, I think those are all the games covered in terms of the playoff race. We've still got 3 games left, but these are the teams where you're just like, oh well, I don't know. Season's probably done unless something miraculous or horrendous happens. But there was some talking points still, so we'll get straight into it. Swindon Cheltenham 3-3 draw, red card, own goal, penalty, all the rest of it. I mean, Cheltenham have had 3 goals from 2 shots on target, which is, I mean, honestly impressive. This was a chaotic game through and through, but I think, I don't know, I think it's still a good advert for League Two, just because there's clearly the entertainment factor there. What did you make of it, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's Will Wright proven his goal scoring ability. I mean, he scored
At both
6.
ends.
Exactly, yeah. So that's what I was going to say. He scored 6 all season now, and he scored 1 in both ends yesterday. So it's it's showing what a true clinical finisher he can be. But it's just a mad game, wasn't it? It was just crazy from start to finish. I don't even know where to begin to start to describe it. If I'm honest, it was just chaos. I mean, yeah, like I said, it's against two teams that the season's probably over. There's talk of whether Cheltenham could make it, possibly. And I got that, but for me, they were always just too inconsistent, and I just couldn't see that changing. But I think they're well tasked in what they do that maybe next season I'm sure they can push on. I'm excited to see them next season. But yeah, I mean, it was just one of them games. You couldn't take your eye off it. There's things happening every single minute, and it was just, yeah, it was bizarre, but what we love to see in League Two. I think a big shout out goes to Jordan Thomas, who scored and put in a wonderful man of the match performance as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even I only saw the highlights of this game, and I was just smiling for every second of it as a neutral. Just like it's just that chaotic League Two energy that you can't get anywhere else. And I don't know. I think you're right in the sense that it's maybe a little bit too late for playoffs. I mean, Cheltenham are only one behind Chesterfield, and we're saying Chesterfield could well make it, but I don't know. I think, as you say, Cheltenham don't quite have that consistency down. They sort of go up a couple of places, then down a couple again, then up a couple. In this case, they are the nearly team essentially. You know, they've got the building blocks there, as do Swindon. In fairness, and I think there'll be interesting sides to look into next season for sure. I think it's just one step too many. And I mean, for Swindon, it's just nice to not be in the relegation zone after the way we were talking about them earlier in the season. You know, they're in a whole lot of trouble, but there's a project there still. What do you think of Swindon at the minute, Jake?
Yeah, I was literally just going to say what you mentioned there. It wasn't that long ago we were having the conversation about could they go down, and I think they went to bottom of the league at one point quite early on in the season. And it's a really good job that Ian Holloway's done to turn them around and make him look like a really comfortable and really solid League Two side. So hopefully he stays next season for them, and they can really be exciting next season.
Absolutely. I mean, there's plenty to talk about for our future episodes. So I'm sincerely hoping that interesting things happen for both sides next season. But anyway, we've still got a couple more to cover, and the next one is Newport Harrogate. And I mean, all I really got from this game is Harrogate just can't defend set pieces at all in any way, shape, or form, as that's pretty much what all three goals were. I mean, yeah, it looked like there were a lot of chances for both sides, but they weren't all set pieces. So, yeah, set piece FC. What do we think of Newport?
Yeah, I mean, again, they're one of those bizarre teams this season, aren't they? Like I say, they win 3-0 one week, they're probably going to lose 3-0 next week, and that'll be the story of them. And it's one of them. It's hard to tactically analyze or analyze how they are this season because they're just so inconsistently inconsistent. I think a huge part of the game yesterday was Nick Townsend. And when you look at it, I know some aren't a fan of XG, but the XG he faced was 2.42. So Harrogate should have scored 2.42 goals, and he's kept them out and kept a clean sheet. So he was huge for them. He was a really big part of that game. And then they go and score 3 as well. And you look at it on the other hand, Harrogate's defense haven't really helped themselves. But yeah, it's one of them again. I mean, I said it in the chat again. I've said it all season. At what point do Harrogate really have to worry about? What do they have to change to make that form change? As I said before in the episode, I think they picked up 2 vital wins in the past 5 against teams really down there, which are 6-pointers. Which makes me think they'll be okay, but they've got some more 6-pointers to play, and if they don't go their way, then they're going to be in real trouble. Only 4 points off ourselves, but I mean, you're looking further down. You're just relying on Morecambe and Carlisle not picking up points now, unfortunately, And that's the case for them. But yeah, Newport, I mean, they lost 5-0 on Tuesday, won 3-0 yesterday. Aggregate of -2 goals still. So we'll have to see what they do on Saturday.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think with Newport, they're just another team. It's their season's probably done at this point. What happens with Nelson Jardim? I'm sure Kieran will be all over that content when we get to that talking point in a future pod. But with Harrogate, I don't know. I think there is still an element of worry there. I know, as you've said, they've won a couple of 6-pointers, but I don't know. I think they're one of those teams where if those bottom sides do suddenly pick up, I'm not sure that Harrogate would be able to generate the momentum to get themselves out of it. I just don't see enough quality in that side, and I'd say the same about Accrington as well. I don't know. I think the way things are looking at the minute, you'd expect both to be okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will be, because all it takes is, as I say, that little bit of momentum. And then the other talking point you mentioned was just the whole manager thing. Can you sack your son? I don't think he would. I genuinely don't think they would. I think they would sooner relegate themselves before making that decision. I mean, I don't know if that's a controversial opinion, but I don't know. I think the only way he'd go is if he walked.
I agree with you in that aspect, but I think that's a real worry as a fan of a club, because we were in that position with Adkins. We were really worried that we wouldn't get rid of him, just based off of our form. Obviously, he is a lovely person, but I think it was the right time for him to leave. And you've got to look at it from Harrogate's perspective. You've got to put the club first, unfortunately. And that's my big worry is if they do drop, are they going to make that choice? You're going to need to at some point. If you're losing games, you're going to need to change something. If it is the manager that's the problem, you're going to have to make that decision. And I just don't know. I agree with you. I don't think they have the power to make that decision. And that's what makes me worryful.
I mean, Jake, what do you think of Harrogate? Do you think they'd make the big call if they had to, or do you think it would be a case of they'll just take the fall and hope they can come back up?
Yeah, it's a really tough one, but I don't think they would, because I think what Simon Reed has built over a number of years does sort of warrant a little bit of leeway, that if it doesn't go his way, then he deserves a little bit more backing and not a rash decision, because he's doing a really good job. Because they are, even though they're 21st, and what we've seen over the past few seasons is quite a high standard from them, they still are overperforming being in League Two.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a tricky one. I mean, it would be a shame if they did go. I mean, I think they're probably okay. I'd expect them to pick up at least a couple of points before the end of the season, which should in theory be enough. But League Two, anything can happen. And of course, the other team that is sort of on that periphery of the relegation zone is Accrington, and they picked up a point against Gillingham. I mean, well, I don't know if it's picked up or lost two, to be honest, with the way that Gillingham have been in the last couple of months. But I don't know. I mean, they went ahead, and then they kind of threw it all away at the end. I know it was a clever little bit of play with the set piece for Gillingham, but at the same time, that guy was stood there for so long. How has no one noticed he's there? Like, why would you not go out and at least kind of half-heartedly mark him, just to stop that from happening? I don't know. What do you think of Accrington, Jack?
Yeah, I think exactly how you said it. It's 2 points dropped for Accrington, and it's a beautiful last minute winner for Gillingham. But yeah, I mean, again, Gillingham, they were on a horrendous run of form, picked up a vital win against Morecambe, and then obviously, again, an interesting win against Bradford, and are now starting to sort of equal out their form. So they'll be hoping that sort of, helps them escape that relegation battle, and that consistent drop, and hopefully they'll be back on form now, and survive. I think 42 points is good enough for survival. But then Accrington again, yeah. I mean, obviously, I said ages ago. Obviously, they beat us in a big 6-pointer. They've then on Tuesday beat Newport 5-0, which is, I mean, an incredible result. You wouldn't expect that in a million years. And then draw against Gillingham, and they're back down to earth. And I think that's one of the things, overall, what we've said about this table, anything can happen. Obviously, we were talking about the relegation battle before. Morecambe and Carlisle could win the next 7 games. It wouldn't surprise me if they did, with the way this league is going. And then it puts those 3 or 4 teams above into real relegation contention. So I'm yet to say, I don't really know. I think it's a decent point for both sides, but in hindsight, it very well could change dependent on the next few results for both teams.
Oh yeah, I'd say it's a more frustrating result for Accrington. I think especially because they had that previous good result as well, and they've just not used that momentum properly. Well, I mean they did for a while, and then they let it all go by conceding a last minute equaliser, and then you're kind of left with a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. And I don't know. I mean, Gillingham have improved in recent weeks. They have been tougher to beat. Doesn't always stop them getting beat, of course, because Newport have done it, Fleetwood have done it in recent weeks. But the games have been, for the most part, they've been a little bit closer. Do we think that Gillingham are finally starting to get over whatever it was their problem is? Do you think that those foundations are still there for next season, or do you think it's a case of rip it all up and start again in the summer, Jake?
Well, I wouldn't say rip it up and start again because they've done that too often and evidently it's not worked. But they still aren't scoring more than 1 goal a game. Whenever they are winning, it is by 1 goal, which is happening far too often. Which, although winning is nice, they do need to be a bit more ruthless throughout the whole season. So maybe a bit more. They had a good recruitment. That's the thing in the summer. So I'm not sure where they go.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was looking back at our season predictions, and I mean, I had Gillingham up there, and obviously I had us up there. So yeah, that's why I've been pushing the Colchester thing so much. It makes it look like I actually know what I'm talking about sometimes. So there you go. Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I think in terms of, I think Gillingham have been probably one of the biggest disappointments this season, aside from us. Uh, I don't know. I think it's another one where you can see there are good players there. I don't know if some of them are kind of in a similar position where it's a case of they just need a fresh start somewhere else. Because I feel like once you've lost it and you've been at a club for a while, you can kind of lose it a little bit, lose your way, and you just need to go anywhere else to find yourself again. But yeah, there we go. We've made it to the end of all of the fixtures. Another eventful week, all done and dusted. But of course, that the season's not done yet. There's a whole lot more to cover in our future episodes, the next of which will be up on the midweek. So we'll likely go out probably on the Thursday. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for tuning in. The support has been absolutely insane, especially over the last couple of months. I don't think we ever thought that this sort of silly little podcast would grow quite as quickly as it has done. And we're excited to just keep bringing you more and more and really push the standards of what we can achieve. So yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, all the rest of it. Whatever you need to do to support us on whatever platform you follow us on. Yeah, it's been great to have you guys, and well, see you on the next one.